Why do some assert that Hongzhou was the most intelligent son of Emperor Yongzheng? Does this mean that Emperor Qianlong's Hongli that was less intelligent? In fact, Hongli was equally brilliant, but they faced very different predicaments. For Hongli, effectively governing the country was his top priority. For Hongzhou, preserving his life amidst the complex court struggles was his primary concern. Hongshi, the third son in the TV series, is executed by Emperor Yongzheng's order, and his fate in history was similar. It's well known that during the fierce competition that among the 9 sons for the throne, members of the 8th Prince's faction that frequently opposed Emperor Yongzheng, causing him considerable trouble. Upon ascending the throne, Emperor Yongzheng naturally took no chances with these former rivals. As Yongzheng's son, Hongshi should have worked alongside his father, but he instead pleaded for the 8th Prince's faction. Although Emperor Yongzheng was reluctant to force his son to death, Hongshi's actions deeply chilled him. At the time, Hongshi, the nominal eldest son of Emperor Yongzheng, whose 3 older brothers had all died young, would have been the most likely heir to the throne had he devoted himself to study and assisted his father in government affairs. However, Hongshi chose to meddle in past disputes, becoming an unfilial son in Yongzheng's eyes. At first, Emperor Yongzheng simply warned Hongshi not to interfere, but Hongshi remained stubborn, even publicly accusing Yongzheng of mishandling the situation. It must be said that Hongshi was truly unusual, who would go against their father for an outsider. Furthermore, Emperor Yongzheng treated him well. After this incident, Emperor Yongzheng was completely disappointed with Hongshi and decided to give him up, adopting him directly to the 8th son, Yunci. Yongzheng reasoned, since Hongshi had such a close relationship with the 8th son and was so fond of interceding on his behalf, why not just let him become his son? That way, he wouldn't have to endure this suffering. In the 4th year of the Yongzheng reign, Hongshi's new father, Yunci, died. Yunci was subsequently expelled from the Forbidden City and removed from the imperial family. Hongshi's tragic fate had a profound impact on Hongzhou, feeling inferior to Hongli in talent and intelligence. He simply chose to renounce his claim to the throne. However, he could not directly announce this decision, lest he embarrass his father and brother, so he sought other means to dispel any suspicion of a claim to the throne. Hongzhou's method was quite unique. He began holding funerals for himself, and he did so regularly. When questioned about this, Hongzhou simply replied, "It's just a personal hobby." Hongzhou's eye-catching and hilarious behavior quickly reached Yongzheng's ears. Yongzheng knew his son's temperament well and was well aware of Hongzhou's mental health. Since Hongzhou was not insane, his own funeral was no joke. Emperor Yongzheng was a shrewd man. He quickly understood his son's intentions and, after a conversation with Hongzhou, was delighted. At least while he lived, Hongzhou would no longer be subject to suspicion of a potential heir apparent. After Yongzheng's death, Hongli succeeded smoothly to the throne, and Hongzhou quietly assumed the role of a prince. As a prince, Hongzhou had to act with caution, although he had a harmonious relationship with his brother, Hongli. The emperor's heart was unpredictable, and history is filled with countless tragedies caused by sudden changes in his temperament. Hongzhou was uncertain whether his brother, the emperor, would suddenly turn against him, even though he tried to minimize his presence. However, Hongzhou eventually realized that being too low-key wasn't a good idea. What if Hongli mistakenly thought he was hiding his abilities to gain power? Ultimately, Hongzhou chose to enter the government with integrity. While not corrupt, he acted flamboyantly, embodying the demeanor of a prince. After Yongzheng ascended the throne, he resided primarily in the imperial palace, and the former Prince Yong's mansion gradually fell into disrepair. After his death, the Yong Palace was granted to Hongzhou by Emperor Qianlong, along with all its contents. Both Hongli and Hongzhou were born in the Qiandi Palace, and spent their childhoods playing and studying there, creating fond childhood memories. This demonstrates the deep brotherly bond between Qianlong and Hongzhou, as Qianlong at least still remembered the time that they spent together at the Yong Palace. One day, during court, Hongzhou encountered the minister Nianqin. For unknown reasons, the two engaged in a brawl in the courtroom. Nianqin was merely an ordinary minister, while Hongzhou was a prince. Even with Hongzhou's punches and kicks, Nianqin dared not fight back, and none of the surrounding ministers dared to intervene. This incident may appear to be a simple brawl, but upon closer examination, it's clear that Qianlong had hidden agendas. Nianqin was no ordinary official. He was Qianlong's grand counselor and a first-class duke, making him one of Qianlong's most favored ministers. However, he was assaulted by Hongzhou, yet Qianlong did not intervene, only visiting Nianqin's home afterward. This raises the question of whether Hongzhou's assault on Nianqin was ordered by Qianlong. Given Hongzhou's temperament, how could he have done something so conspicuous? He certainly wouldn't have dared, and Qianlong had good reason to have asked Hongzhou to carry it out. Nianqin was favored by Qianlong not because he had a special affection for him, but because he was the youngest of the regents retained by Yongzheng. Qianlong simply viewed him as a test subject for his own ministerial training. But Nianqin seemed unaware of this and still considered himself exceptionally capable. Qianlong had Hongzhou teach him a lesson. Firstly, because Hongzhou's status meant he wouldn't cause trouble even if he actually attacked. Secondly, it was an opportunity to warn Nianqin against his arrogance and the assumption that his title of first-class duke was all-powerful. And thirdly, by personally delivering medicine to Nianqin, Qianlong demonstrated his care for his subjects. All of this was the result of the tacit cooperation that between Hongzhou and his brother, accomplished with remarkable skill. While it's unknown whether Hongzhou and Qianlong discussed the incident beforehand, his assault on Yinqin in court was more than meets the eye. Hongzhou, a trusted aide to Qianlong, lived to the age of 60. Yinqin had outlived his usefulness that over 20 years earlier and was executed by Qianlong. Hongzhou, with his wit, successfully circumvented Yongzheng's suspicions and Qianlong's fears, becoming Qianlong's right-hand man and assisting him in handling court affairs. The brothers' bond remained strong until his death, and while they occasionally argued, it never materially impacted their relationship. After Hongzhou's death, Qianlong showed meticulous care for his descendants, and even into modern times, Hongzhou's lineage continues to flourish.